Welcome to the Five Heart Podcast. I am not Greg Mahachko. He's not with us tonight because he's a lame-o. Instead, you got me, John Johnston, doing the intro, and I hope I got it right. Joining me are Todd Wolverton, who's been on this podcast probably way too much, and Dylan Guenther, who has done a marvelous job covering wrestling for Corn Nation. And if you haven't figured it out by now, we have a wrestling show. Or should we go wrestling?
Wrestling.
We'll go wrestling because it's official. This is wrestling. We're going to start out right. We're just going to zoom into this. Unless you guys want to talk about things like, I don't know, my new car.
You talked about that last week.
No, that wasn't on the podcast, though. Okay, fine. You know, we usually start with something about me,
John.
because mostly this is about
What kind of
me.
car is it, John?
It's thank you. It's a 1999 Ford Exposition. You just walked right into that. You should get out more.
Right? Yeah, I should.
I am trading. We're getting rid of the 2003 Ford van or Dodge Caravan with a rust hole about that big as your head in the driver's door because it's falling apart. It's going to the junkyard, and I bought a tank to replace it that is actually, well, how old are you?
I'm 34.
Wow, well, shit, you're not even close. It's older than the younger people that write for us.
Hey, man,
All
I just got a 97 Chrysler LHS, if that makes you feel better.
Yeah, you know, cheap insurance. You wreck them, you throw them away, you go get another one. That's what I like about it.
Right.
And it's a Ford Exposition, so it sits up high. So when the Civil War / apocalypse starts, I can just run into people and they won't fly up into the windshield.
It's perfect.
You know, we'll be running over them.
I put a new battery in my car.
That goes perfect with your Civil War hairdo.
I'm working hard on this, you can tell. I'm grooming this stuff. And okay, let's go into wrestling. That's what everybody expects with you two guys around. What happened at Iowa? Why did Iowa beat the hell out of us? Why Iowa? Why couldn't it have been like Purdue or Illinois or a team we don't hate as much as them sons of bitches?
I know that does suck. I wish it was somebody else, but it's not. And I anticipate Iowa doing this to pretty much everybody. So, like, just because we were the first ones, like, just pump the brakes. It'll happen to pretty much everybody.
Are they that much better?
Short answer, yes. Basically, it's Iowa at the top and then huge gap, and then there's about 5 teams after that.
So it's like Ohio State and everybody else in football?
It's even wider gap. It's kind of like Alabama and then everybody else in football.
Yeah,
really?
There's no question. They are absolutely the most elite wrestling team this season. They were last year too, and these are probably last year and this year are probably the best Iowa teams that they've had since Gable when he was the head coach. They are absolutely stacked, and everybody else is going to fight for second place. I think in a duel, the only team that might score points in double digits against them, in my opinion, is Michigan. There's some people that think that maybe Penn State has got some good guys.
Wow.
They're that elite.
Yeah, Michigan definitely is going to score maybe 10 or 12 on them. But Penn State lost some guys. I don't think they really have a chance. Michigan looks good. They got a couple guys back from Olympic red shirts that are top tier dudes, but Iowa is just stacked from top to bottom. They don't have a weakness. It's definitely they're going to get number 1 and everybody's fighting for number 2, and that's at the national level too.
Right now, Iowa's.
This is great. You start the show out, and now I'm sad. That's what I am. I'm just fucking sad.
Hey, okay. You want me to make you feel better?
Yes. You need to bring it up. You know, Alabama beats the shit out of everybody. Iowa beats the shit out of anybody. Could there be a team I actually like that's good at something in college?
I mean, Nebraska's good. We were number 6 going in, but it's just that much difference. Nebraska has a really good team, top to bottom, one of the deepest teams, weight for weight in the country. But like I said, Iowa has like a guy that's number 1, 2, 3, 4 at like every weight.
What?
It's
Are
crazy.
they paying them? You know they're using bagmen.
It must be the great countryside they have there.
I'd say something negative, but it'd probably apply to wrestlers, and that wouldn't be fair across the board. Okay, so you guys, I don't really have a great amount of wrestling knowledge, so it's your show. You guys flow with each other.
Okay. So I think there were some bright spots against Iowa. We have at 149 Brock Hardy, that he's a true freshman. He lost to number 8 guy from Iowa, Max Murin, 6'2", and he looked really good the week before against Minnesota. He was a really highly touted guy. So I think he's gonna do some good things this year and going forward. Taylor Venz got beat badly. He got beat by actually head assistant coach Brand's kid, Nelson Brands. Yeah, I don't know what's up with Venz. He looked really bad. So that's kind of concerning.
Did he wrestle against Minnesota?
No, he didn't wrestle against Minnesota. Skin issue. He failed a skin test before the duel, so they had to go with the freshman. So that was his first match, and it was pretty disappointing. And yeah, at 197, number 3, Eric Schultz for Nebraska. He got a win against number 4 guy for Iowa. So he pretty much proved that he's, championship caliber guy. But other than that, yeah, it was just they put it on us. It was pretty bad.
I'll tell you what, Hardy, you mentioned Hardy, Dylan. That guy had that 2-year Mormon mission. And right. When he was in high school, he used to have some battles. I think you've mentioned this in some of your articles, but he had some battles against Sammy Sasso from Ohio State in high school.
Right.
And here's the thing with Hardy from my perspective. I think the guy's going to be a hammer because he's tough on top and he's incredibly flexible and difficult to take down. But here's the issue. He doesn't know how to wrestle a college-length match yet. He was fatigued in the match against Minnesota towards the end, though he hung on and won. And he ran out of gas against Murin. Murin's, I'll tell you what, Max Murin, he's the lowest rated guy on the Iowa team, and he's rated number 8. But Max Murin, boy, he is on you like stink on crap. And he's gonna be a grinder. And Hardy's got to get in shape. I think he's the one guy on the team that needed a regular wrestling season to round into shape, by the Big Ten tournament time. I think that this season could be too condensed for him, to really grow and develop like he normally would.
But wait a minute. How much different is this season than a regular season? I mean, they're doing the conference only wrestling, right?
They're going to wrestle 9 matches.
Well, how long would it normally be?
They'd wrestle 20 plus before the conference tournament.
Before the conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, because of tournament season before the dual season, they'll go to a tournament and they'll get 4, 5, 6, 7 matches depending on where they go as far as winning and losing. And that also gives a chance for the teams to wrestle guys that may be redshirting. Mm-hmm. So they can get some experience in at the Division I level without having to be put into a duel. It helps that the NCAA gave their eligibility waiver. So, if you're a freshman this year, you're a freshman next year.
Yeah.
Although that does, because wrestling's so specific to coaches scheduling out, we have this guy coming in, he's going to redshirt while this guy finishes his eligibility, and then we don't lose a year. So it threw a huge wrench into all these coaches' plans as far as because next year the coaches were planning on losing 5 seniors after the season, but all those 5 seniors can come back next year and be seniors again. So there's no red shirts this year. That's why you're seeing true freshmen out there. I mean, if it was a normal year, Brock Hardy would not be starting in the lineup. He'd be redshirting.
Yeah. Upon reflection, I'll tell you what, I understand that for all of the sports. I get it. But I really think the NCAA made a mistake. They should have given those guys that were seniors last year another year and let them have another year and, just treat it like a normal year other than that. I kind of
agree. Yeah. I definitely think they should have, because a lot of those guys last year got, screwed out of a chance at an NCAA title. And it's almost like they're rewarding the guys that are still in college for that. Because, some of those guys, obviously there were some juniors out there that had a chance at a national title that are going to benefit from having an extra year, but those seniors didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, I mentioned Hardy. I think that he's going to have a great career. I really do. I think that he's got a lot of promise. But of all of the Nebraska guys that wrestled against Iowa, and I'm even going to go back to the Minnesota match, I think the guy from Nebraska I'm most excited about right now is Mikey Labriola. And, he is an emotional leader on that team. He's a likable kid. What bothered me prior to this year, now granted, he's only wrestled 2 matches this year, but I always thought he wrestled out of control. And he's going to have those moments, I think. You can't take the stripes all the way off the tiger. But what I've seen out of him in the 2 matches that he's wrestled is very aggressive, more controlled kind of wrestling than what I have seen in the past out of him. I'm excited about him. I think that he's going to take that step. And I see him on one of the top steps, on the podium when they get to nationals this year. I really feel good about Mikey Labriola.
Yeah, I definitely think after these first 2 duels, it's Mikey Labriola and Eric Schultz at 197 separated themselves as far as being our top guys. I think Labriola was robbed a little bit this weekend because Iowa chose not to wrestle their number 1 guy. And if you look at the schedule coming up, it's a condensed schedule, so we know who each guy is going to face.
Yep.
And if you look at what's coming, Labriola does not face a guy like Michael Kemmer from Iowa, who is number 1, that he can really test himself against before the Big Ten tournament. So I understand, Iowa didn't want their guy to wrestle Labriola on his first match. That is what it is. But
wait a minute. Did they do that for seeding later on? They're already thinking that far ahead.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think because he was a healthy scratch. They wrestled a freshman who is super highly recruited and will be their starter someday. And he wrestled Labriola to a 7-4, which actually he did pretty well against Labriola. But still, he didn't get to face the guy that he'll probably he could possibly face in the Big Ten final.
Well, here's the deal at 174. Kemmer, has had he's had injury issues, and Brand said after the tournament he was nicked up. How nicked up? If it probably not enough that he couldn't have wrestled. But You look at 174, and I'm not going to go through the names, but in the top 5 ranked guys at 174, you got Iowa, Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, Penn State. 5 Big Ten guys in the top 5 ranked guys, 174. Strap it up for the Big Ten tournament, because that is amazing when you have that kind of depth.
And like I said, the bad thing for Mikey Labriola is he didn't get that chance against Kemmer, and the way Nebraska's schedule works out, we missed out on. We're not going to face any of the top. Somehow it happened where we're not going to face number 2 Michigan, number 2 Penn State, number 11 Ohio State. So Labriola actually is not going to get to face any of those guys you just named, and that's it sucks. So like when he gets the Big Ten tournament, that could be a detriment to him as far as not being having seen that top shelf guy all year.
Another guy that I'm interested in, and I know that Dylan, you've written quite a bit about him and have some pretty high praise for Chad Red.
Right.
I would say this. I was excited to see Chad Red on the attack early in that match against Jaden Ironman. And, that's good to see. Red has the reputation of being that guy that peaks at tournament time, gets off to a slow start. You can't get off to a slow start this year. But Red went right out, got a deep shot on the guy, scored on him, and looked really good. The problem when anybody wrestles Jaden Ironman is that Jaden Ironman, he could throw a cradle from his back. I mean, he could throw a cradle from the back 40 for that matter.
Right.
And he got that cradle hooked up on Red and scored. And that pretty much determined the match. By the way, Jaden Ironman, Nebraska connection. Stepdad, Mike Ironman, All-American at Nebraska, I think in 1993 or something like that. But yeah.
I didn't know that, but that guy is an absolute stud. Honestly, how he didn't pin Chad Red, I don't know. Chad Red really, that was pretty remarkable, him even getting out of that. But, he ended up losing 8-4, which, like you said, Chad Red, he gets off to slow starts in the season. That's just how he is. And he also is the kind of guy that waits for you to shoot and likes to reattack off it. So, like you said, I was really happy to see him go for that. I mean, he blasted him with a double leg.
Yeah.
And it was like Jordan Burroughs double leg. So it was pretty impressive. But you mentioned Chad Red. I think this is what hurts Nebraska the most, period, this season, is they have 2 guys that are legitimate All-American guys at the same weight. Ridge Lovett last year was a 133-pounder. True freshman. As a true freshman, he was a stud. He's gotten so much better over the offseason. I mean, he won a national championship at junior nationals in freestyle. He can't make 133 pounds anymore. So he's at 141. So you have him sitting behind, a top 5 guy in the country. So, and we've seen at 133, we've struggled hard. So I think the biggest hurdle Nebraska has is not having Ridge Lovett line up this year and just how much that's hurt.
I agree with you. I was going to ask you what more you knew about Ridge Lovett. And that's unfortunate for Nebraska. It truly is. So.
And then I anticipate him honestly redshirting next year. So it might be like it could possibly be 2 years till we see Lovett in the starting lineup.
Yeah,
because I know they were planning on redshirting him this year. From the talks I had with Manning, he sounded like they were going to redshirt him this year, but with the NCAA, eligibility stuff, this is just a lost year for him. Like sitting behind Red, really, it's kind of unfortunate.
Well, what's coming up, Dylan? What's next?
On Saturday, the Nebraska hosts Maryland and Northwestern. Northwestern's ranked 25th. Maryland is not ranked. They've actually gotten beat so badly this year. They've had one individual win in 3 duels.
I've always heard that Maryland was a top wrestling team, joining the Big Ten.
No. Well, So
No, they're a doormat.
So we get another top 10 matchup though at 141.
But I see Nebraska getting some individual win, maybe some bonus points. Who's that? I'm blanking on that.
Wait a minute. I want to go back to our team. What about this newer kid, the Haas, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Haas. He filled in for Venz against Minnesota.
Okay. All right. He filled in for Venz. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And then, which was weird, against Minnesota, he beat number 15 guy. And then the next week at Iowa, he lost to an Iowa backup 15-6.
Well, he lost to Miles Wilson.
I don't know if we maybe kind of caught lightning in a bottle in that duel or what.
What do you mean? Haas lost to the Iowa wrestler that wasn't that good?
I mean, Iowa, like anybody at Iowa is good, but he wasn't, number 15 in the country, and he lost by 9. So like it was a pretty big beat. It was a pretty big beating. But I think Haas he's a true freshman. He was a California state champ. He's going to be good.
Yeah.
But it'll just take some time. He'll, he's just waiting for Venz to expire his eligibility, I guess.
Okay, I'm sorry I cut you guys off from what's coming up next. And we got Maryland Northwestern. This it sounds like this wrestling season's going to go real fast.
Yeah, it's going to be over in like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Where are they going to hand the
6-7 weeks? I think. The end. It's a good
Big
question. I
Ten
don't know off the top of
wrestling
my head.
tournament is where?
Penn State. It's at Penn State.
Okay, yeah.
Minnesota wrestled at Nebraska. Now Minnesota is going to play volleyball at Nebraska. I'm not going to get any photography in at all. It's kind of disheartening.
Well,
Yeah, that is a bummer. That is a bummer. I was hoping to get it to 1-2, but it doesn't look like I might be able to. So, but anyway, we were talking about what's coming up. So, this weekend we got Northwestern. Really is about, other than like I said, Maryland, but they're really bad. Northwestern's got some guys, but honestly, Nebraska should have a pretty easy time with them as far as like a team goes. Nebraska faces 5 ranked opponents coming up. We should be favored in every matchup. Which, like I said, we're not facing Michigan or Penn State or Ohio State, which I think is a bummer because I'd like to see it against those top teams. But I mean, it is what it is with the season.
So they shortened it that much?
Not really. Just like, I don't know how, but Nebraska's draw was just insane as far as like we had, we obviously faced number 1 Iowa, but like 4 of the next best teams in the Big Ten, we just happened to not draw.
They have never, since the Big Ten came together with, 14 teams, they've never wrestled everybody. They've kind of had some kind of a rotation. And, there was a year that Iowa and Penn State were not scheduled to wrestle each other, but they scheduled each other anyway. It's like Dylan says, when they don't wrestle Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, that takes the guts out of their schedule. Now they do wrestle Wisconsin and Rutgers. And Rutgers has got some good guys. I mean, it'll be a big match for Chad Redd. And that's one that will be huge for Chad Redd because that could help him in the seedings. Definitely.
Sebastian Rivera, number 1.
Yeah, against Sebastian Rivera.
Yeah, he's a stud. He was the Big Ten champ last year at 133. He moved up. So that's pretty much Chad Red's only real competition coming up. If you look at the schedule, that's the one to circle.
Yeah.
But like I said, with a lot of guys, without hitting on Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, it's going to be tough to really have these guys tested that much going into the conference tournament. So it's going to be wild. Anything can happen. Conference, Big Ten, NCAAs.
Well,
So when is that? Is that that's the only tournament they get this year then? I mean, other than the NCAA.
yeah, the Big
those will
Ten's
be-
are the first weekend in March.
Couldn't they have extended this into April, May?
Wrestling people have been begging to
Right.
change the wrestling calendar so that they didn't have to go head to head with March Madness. And
Right.
you ask a very legitimate question. Why couldn't they extend it? Probably because of the contracts that they had. I mean, it's a big undertaking to have the NCAA wrestling tournament. I think it's in St. Louis this year. That's huge. And so I suppose that kind of locked them in, at least for that. Now, as soon as I say that, obviously, with basketball, they're looking at playing the entire basketball tournament in the state of Indiana, for God's sakes. But that's that's the NCAA's cash cow. Wrestling is a secondary issue for them. And, they whatever, we'll just make it easy and deal with it. So
really what it comes down to is they didn't want to spend the money.
probably.
Yeah. Or just the headache of moving everything.
Yeah. I mean, the Big Ten tournament was scheduled for Penn State anyway. It was in the rotation.
Right.
They're just going to make it work.
I think we should just have it. We should just have it in Minnesota for John to shoot, though.
Yeah,
I
come
agree.
on. I mean, last year I was set up to shoot the NCAA finals up here, and it got canceled 3 days before the damn thing was going to happen, or something like that.
The day after our podcast about it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was actually. It was. All right, Dylan. I hate to talk about Iowa, but you mentioned before we started that if you took all the best wrestlers in the world and put them up against Iowa.
No, okay, so I was thinking
I
about.
want you to pose this as like an Avengers movie, a Galaxy Guardian people.
Okay, Iowa is definitely like Thanos in his bunch, right? No, so my idea was like Iowa is so good that like how would they fare against the rest of the Big Ten if you made like a perfect Big Ten lineup against Iowa's guys, right? And like 7 out of the 10 number one guys in the country at their weight are from the Big Ten. So that means only 3 are outside of the conference. And honestly, like Iowa has a couple wins where it's guaranteed, like Spencer Lee, number 1 at 125. He'll never get beat. Alex Marinelli at 165. There's not really a Big Ten guy to challenge him. And there's a lot of like toss up 1 versus 2, 2 versus 4 matches that like Iowa would legitimately have a chance if you put together the best wrestler from the Big Ten at every weight class against them. Like it's crazy. They're historically good. The Big Ten team that I put together actually consists of a wrestler from 8 different schools. So like that just shows you, like Purdue's got 1 guy, Ohio State's got 1 guy, Rutgers has their number 1 guy, Northwestern has a guy that's number 1, but like Iowa has it at every weight class. It's just, but on the plus side, when all these guys graduate, Iowa will become mortal again. So,
Yeah.
But the bad thing is they're going to be able to bring this whole lineup back next year with the NCAA waiver. So we might have to deal with this Iowa team again next year.
Okay, so this year they get free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So they get free. Let me ask this. right now you're looking at, football. What happened was if, you get a free year of eligibility. And my understanding of football is this, that they didn't necessarily raise the scholarship limits, but if you're a senior, want to come back, your scholarship does not count against the limit. I assume that's true for wrestling also.
Yeah, it is. I talked to Manning about that, and he said that's true as long as the school is willing to foot the bill for those seniors coming back. And it sounds like Nebraska will, but.
Well, I think Nebraska, out of most athletic departments, usually does the right thing by their student athletes, right. And I know that's kind of a homer statement, but I shouldn't. I'll not go into that very far. Here's the thing with football, though. You have over 1,000 players in this transfer portal, and you have massive amounts of just players that are going to stay with their programs, and you have this giant glut because you have all these seniors coming back and players coming back and getting an extra year of eligibility. Then you have all these seniors in high school that are coming out, and nobody gets to evaluate them at camps. They don't get spring games. They don't get, are they going to get scholarships? Are they going to get seen by people? Right. In other words, what I'm asking is this. Is wrestling going to have a problem where they have this huge glut of athletes because of this year? Like football is, where, there might be guys that are, I don't know, they're Division I guys, and they might have to go down to Division II just to get a scholarship or just to be able to play football. Is that true for wrestling?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely is. I think that you're going to see a lot of really small recruiting classes. So it does hurt guys that are maybe being recruited for this year and the coming year. But I do know that like Nebraska brought in 2 recruits for this recruiting class, and Manning told me that they absolutely would have had a bigger class if not for the season being canceled and getting waiver. And they're sending these 2 guys off to the Olympic Training Center where they can train for a gap year, and then they can join the team next year.
Well, something else too, John, is there's no NFL. There's no NBA. Right. There's nowhere for these guys to go. And most of them, most of them are, let me put it this way. The very best of them, when they finish college, they're going to wrestle at a regional training center, which might very likely be the same wrestling room that they've been in the last 4 or 5 years, so that they can train for international competition. So, you look at any of these guys and, the vast majority of them will be back next year. Like Michael Kemmer at Iowa, it will be his 7th year next year.
Yeah. Wow, that's like me going to college.
Yeah, it is.
Cram that 4-year degree right in there.
It will. Now, with Michael Kemmer,
that too, John.
I would say this about Michael Kemmer. If Michael Kemmer wins a national championship this year, if he is the national champion, he is one kid. It wouldn't surprise me that he walks away from the sport. His body has been beaten up so damn bad that he might just say, you know what, it's been a great career. I'm going to do something else. I could see that with a kid like Kemmer.
And I'm sure Mikey Labriola would be thankful.
Yeah, and he very well could be. But the thing about this season that I think is going to be really interesting is who are going to be those surprises? Who are going to be those guys, that haven't had a lot of attention, maybe a freshman, that are going to rise up and knock off some big names? Because this is a very deep season. I mean, you look at the rankings, and compared to a lot of seasons, definitely dominated by juniors and seniors at the top. And I'll be real curious if there's any young guys, that start taking some scalps and can make a name for themselves.
So when these guys graduate as seniors, you said there's no MBA. Or why didn't somebody start one?
They've tried.
They've tried, yeah. Well, actually, right now, this is a good segue too. Like Flow Wrestling's been having like MMA style wrestling cards where
Right.
Jordan Burroughs has been the main event on 2 of them.
You'd think there's a big. Put it this way: some company that makes Red Bull came up with an idea for like hockey players to fly down the sides of hills on insane racing with their the Crushed Ice series. Just because they got it on TV and they had a sponsor and stuff like that. I have a brother who's huge. He's a huge dirt track racing guy. And he's been sponsoring young people for years, sponsoring their cars. And what he's told me is that I think it is Flow Sports, that they now have a whole bunch of these dirt tracks have set up cameras and people subscribe to Flow Sports. And now they're able to, they're able to watch their racing online. So I would think that would provide a huge opportunity for the sport that,
I think
there's an itch for just about everything.
Yeah, I think we're actually like in the infancy stage of something really big happening with wrestling. I think its popularity's grown as far as like youth level and then college level. And you're seeing these programs that are actually getting more money towards resources and like facilities, and fan bases are becoming more into the sport. So I think like in the future, these guys will be able to make more money doing this and have more of kind of a opportunities out like after college. But like you said, it's never going to be to the level of NFL or NBA, Major League Baseball, nothing like that.
Well, I think, I'm glad that you guys brought this up, because I think Flow Wrestling has really, they've stepped up. And, where quote unquote professional wrestling of this style, where it's failed in the past is they always tried to make it in a dual format concept, and having teams and team competition. That whole boxing card, MMA card, why didn't somebody think about that 20 years ago? That's perfect. That's perfect for the sport. Even with Jordan Burroughs' situation, he and Taylor had to delay their match from Saturday to Wednesday, and yet they were able to still bring together a very competitive card on that Wednesday night that people wanted to see.
Okay, explain that.
Well,
I don't know anything about it. I don't pay attention to,
Well, what's been going on is they've been, and Iowa's done some, Penn State's done some, Wisconsin, they've had some. They were looking for ways to kind of fill a vacuum for wrestling during COVID. And so they started putting together these kind of like MMA cards. Hawkeye Wrestling Club did it at Coralville outside Iowa City. And literally they put current University of Iowa wrestlers up against international level wrestlers for the U.S. And not only did they have matches between current Iowa Hawkeyes and international level guys, they also had some women's matches. Okay. And they did that at Penn State, and they've done it a couple of times at Wisconsin. Flo's done it with Jordan Burroughs. But with the Burroughs and Taylor thing, that got postponed a few nights. And it interestingly enough, what became the feature match on the original scheduled date that Saturday night was a women's match.
Yeah,
that became the featured match. And that, the fact that, I think too many times we're underselling how significant it is that we have women wrestling now in terms of expanding the fan base.
But
then
I wasn't aware we had women's wrestling on.
I think we'll have it in college soon.
Yeah, it's at Division II, NAIA, Division III. It is the fastest growing women's sport in the United States.
I did not know this.
I'll give you, Iowa is, I just read it before this. 2 years ago, 87 high school wrestlers and the girls wrestlers in Iowa wrestled in the first Iowa Girls High School Wrestling Tournament, sponsored by the Coaches Association, not the state organization. Last year, 364. This year, 447 girls entered in the state wrestling tournament. Now, it's an invitational, not a qualifier, but they had over 600 girls that wrestled in high school in the state of Iowa this year, and it's not even a sanctioned sport. Most of the states surrounding Iowa have sanctioned it, and it's a big deal in places like California, Hawaii, and some other states, and that's broadening the appeal of the sport.
And you're seeing a lot of girls in youth wrestling too. I have a nephew who is in wrestling, and you go to the practices and there's a handful of girls, just, 5, 6, 7-year-old girls that are wrestling right there with the boys. I've seen a girl pin a guy, there's some pretty tough out there.
Yeah.
I had something snarky to say, but I'll just leave it.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I don't know how deep you want to go on this, but I started coaching high school wrestling in 1985. And my first coaching position, well, actually, I started coaching before that. I was coaching at Lincoln Pius when I was in college, but I was a head wrestling coach in 1985. And I was at Galva Holstein for 8 years. And probably in about year 5 is when the first girls started showing up. And usually they were at the lighter weights. And some of those girls were pretty good because, they came up through the youth program. And I had a couple of kids that were lightweight wrestlers that, they were just little scrawny guys, and we wanted them out there to fill a weight class. And they got nervous as hell about having to wrestle against a girl. Now, in my old caveman mentality as a coach, I made a deal with those kids that I said, unless the outcome of a duel depends upon it, I will never make you go out on the mat and wrestle against a girl. Because I thought probably the worst thing that could happen to the self-esteem of a young 14-year-old boy would be to get beat by a girl. And, so that was my mentality back in 1990.
Well, let's be honest, Todd. Back in 1990, that would be true. I don't know. I'm an old crusty man, far removed from this stuff, but yeah. I imagine I hope that it's not the case now.
No, it's definitely changed. Yeah. But what you have is occasionally you have some girls out there that do compete on the boys' teams and will wrestle against boys. That's not as unusual it was in 1990. There was a little gal up where I've been from in Northeast Iowa. Her name's Felicity Taylor. She wrestled at South Winneshiek. She qualified for the state boys wrestling tournament in her senior year. She is one of the top ranked women's wrestlers in the United States. Now she wrestles in college. She's got a budding international career. And she's making something of herself. Those times have changed. At the high school where I was the principal for the previous 11 years, last year they had 2 girls, both of them placed at the state tournament. This year they've got 6 girls. So it's a thing. It's a thing.
Let me ask this. Is the state of Iowa so far ahead of everybody in women's wrestling?
No, they're behind.
Well, good. Fuck them.
They're behind.
Good.
They are behind.
That sounds like Iowa. Behind.
They're ahead of the
word.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else for wrestling?
I just want to touch on one thing. And, Dylan covered this well on the blog, on Coordination. Jordan Burroughs. Jordan Burroughs, I tell you what, I think I even posted as a comment. I said that I would be shocked if Jordan Burroughs could stick within 3 points of David Taylor. And Jordan Burroughs ended up losing to David Taylor. It was 4-4. Taylor won on criteria.
I have no idea what that means, by the way.
Well, David
is that like an ice skating if you have to do a double Lutz triple angle back toe?
David Taylor had a higher scoring point or a higher scoring move, and that's why he won.
Oh, okay.
But David Taylor is the number 1 ranked wrestler in the world at a weight class that's about 20 pounds heavier than Jordan Burroughs.
Right.
Jordan Burroughs is quote unquote, he's on the downside of his career. I mean, from an age perspective, he's on the downside. But I'll tell you what, that guy to wrestle that tough against David Taylor,
right?
I don't count Jordan Burroughs out. I was convinced that Jordan Burroughs would leave his shoes at the center of the mat at the Olympic trials this year against Kyle Dake. I didn't think that there was any way that Jordan Burroughs would be able to beat Kyle Dake 2 out of 3 matches again. But I think Jordan Burroughs has taken it to yet another level, and I would look forward to him to make the Olympic team and medal.
Yeah. When I talked to Manning, it was kind of surreal. I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, I'm just in between training sessions with JB. So, like, you're really, I'm talking to this guy in between training sessions with the Olympian, Olympic champion. But he was talking about it. He was like, I don't know what these people think. He's on a decline. And he's like, he's only gotten better. He's better. He's like, it's almost kind of like when you hear about like a Tom Brady. It's like, okay, like maybe he's slowed down a little bit physically to a certain extent, but like mentally he's got it to a new level. His attitude's a new level. Everything he does is just about winning and getting better, and like he's more focused and all this stuff that just comes with age, I think. But he's like, his athletic ability hasn't waned enough that like he's gained that mental aspect, but still is a peak physical specimen that I anticipate, honestly, him and Taylor both coming home with Olympic golds.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
It would be a good YouTube video for you to do, Dylan.
What's that?
Is to in your massive amount of spare time that I know you have. Yeah. I want you to come up with a series of YouTube videos imitating Mark Manning doing regular day things. Like going to Burger King and placing an order, or going to Home Depot, going to Hy-Vee.
Oh man, he's an intense guy. I'll tell you what. It was kind of like talking to John Gruden. Like you see those videos of interviewing John Gruden where you just get into everything, and yeah, he's a ball. That guy, he's the guy that when he retires always has projects going on. You can't just sit down and drink beer. Like he's got to have stuff to do. But that, and I will say this. He kind of pulled some wool over my eyes on a couple things during our interview. I think was pretty interesting. He told me that completely were not what happened at all. Like a lot of it was weight stuff. Like he told me that Kevon Davenport was a 149er pounder. He told me he had hollow bones, like jokingly. And then all of a sudden he starts the season up at 157. Like I think, like and a lot of times coaches will use the media to like, oh, I want these coaches to think he's going to wrestle at this weight or whatever. I think he did that to me. And same thing with Peyton Robb. He told me there's no way he's going to 165. And that's where he's at. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
There's a hell of a lot more gamesmanship in wrestling than I ever thought there was.
Well, yeah. In Brands' post-match interview, Brands mentioned how it got chippy at the first whistle. And you talk to Iowa fans close to the Iowa wrestling program. They think that Mark Manning is the he is the whiniest opposing coach that they go against. Now, I'm going to get to a point here. Mark Manning, he will tell you, those sons of bitch and Brands brothers. But the thing about it is that I've been around a lot of those guys. Over my lifetime, I've been around a lot of them. Mark Manning could be the long lost triplet of Terry and Tom Brands. I mean, from an intensity level, those guys are just absolutely off the charts. Now, there's other wrestlers that are almost as psychotic as them. But when you talk about Mark Manning, he's not going to back down to anybody. And they're both sides of it. They're going to defend their wrestlers, and they're going to try to manipulate those officials for every possible call they can. And I think people are probably putting money on who's the first one that's going to go to the table and start bitching, and it's the game within the game.
And was it Tom or Terry that used to coach in Nebraska?
Terry did.
Yeah, Terry. Yeah, Terry was even an assistant for us for in the early thousands. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's funny. Yeah.
I sat next to my dad brought Terry over to the state tournament in Iowa for the finals one year. And I sat next to Terry for the entire finals at the old Veterans Auditorium in Des Moines. I had bruises in my ribs and on my arms because that guy just can't flip and sit still. But
did you see him during his Nelson Brands match?
He wrestled it with him.
Oh yeah, he was wrestling the folding chair.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you what. I want to tell you guys this. Just here's and I understand this is a Nebraska podcast, but I got to share this. Tom and Terry Brands, twin brothers, Sheldon, Iowa, clear up in the northwest corner of the state. Those guys were legends before they were even in high school, and they are two of the most intense people that exist on the planet. And I heard this story about these guys when they were in college. Neither of them are drinkers. They don't drink. They don't do drugs. They don't do any of that. Thank God for humanity. But it was after the season was over, and a bunch of the Iowa wrestlers decided they were going to go to Florida for spring break. This is a true story. At least Royce Alger, who was a few years ahead of the Brands boys, and he was absolutely a wild man. And he did drink a lot, but he was a crazy SOB that was a few years ahead of the twins. And he was a grad assistant at Iowa, and he went along on this trip to Florida. So they load up in a van. There's about a half a dozen of these guys. And Tom was driving when they left Iowa City. And they get headed south to Florida. And Royce is telling the story, and he's elaborating a lot. But anyway, bottom line is everybody fell asleep apparently in the van except for Tom, who was driving. And then Royce says, all of a sudden, he says, I just must have sensed that something was wrong. And I woke up, and son of a bitch, we're in a median. We're parked in the medium of the interstate. And he said, we're in Tennessee. And he said, I slept to Tennessee. And then I'm thinking, what the hell are we doing parked in the median? Of course, everybody in the back, they're all passed out because they were drinking. Well, where's Tom? Tom's not in the van. And so Royce said he got out of the van in the median in the middle of the interstate trying to figure out what's going on. He walks around the back of the van, and here's Tom and Terry fighting like sons of bitches. I mean, they're just beating the piss out of each other in the middle of the median of the interstate. Royce says, what the hell's going on here? So he's breaking these two brothers up. And he says, what are you guys doing? And Terry said, it was my turn to drive.
God. Oh, my God.
Oh, man.
Okay, there's your Iowa head wrestling coaches.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, quite a few stories. I'm excited about Nebraska. I think that they're going to, they'll bring home a trophy from the NCAA tournament this year. They will.
Yeah, I think so. I think
so what we're looking at is this. It's kind of like in football where Alabama is the best team and Ohio State was destroyed, but they were still a damn good team. And the problem is you look at it and you go, wow, well, they sucked. No, actually, they would have killed everybody else in the nation. But unfortunately, there was that one team, and it just happens to be them fucking shit asses from Iowa.
Yep. That's exactly how it is.
I think depending upon matchups, and I haven't looked at them that close, Dylan, maybe you have, but if Nebraska was to square up against Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State in a duel, even though I personally think Michigan's the second best team in the country, but I think Nebraska could beat them in a duel based upon how they line up in their lineups. Maybe it would be pretty close.
Michigan would be really close. I think Nebraska would actually handle Penn State pretty easily because they lost a lot of firepower with a lot of top guys. But Michigan, bringing those guys back from Olympic red shirt, they're definitely the number 2 in the country. But I definitely think Nebraska is in the conversation for the 3rd, 4th best team in the nation. But, not good enough to score more than 6 points against Iowa.
Ow. God damn.
I mean, it is what it is, man. I'm a realist.
We're coming to the end here. We need to end on an up note.
Okay, here's your up note. I guarantee that we will get a trophy between Eric Schultz and Mikey Labriola this year.
Todd, do you have anything for an up note?
I think that Eric Schultz has an outstanding chance to win a national championship. I think that, he's ranked number 2 or 3, depending upon what poll you're looking at. I think he's got the mental toughness and the mindset to win it all. I'm excited about Mikey Labriola. After Michael Kemmer beat that SOB from Penn State last year, Hall.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody beats Michael Kemmer. I just kind of got that gut feeling. But I think Nebraska, I would be shocked if they don't have 5 All-Americans. I think they legitimately could have 5 All-Americans. And that would be great if they did. Yeah,
I definitely think four at minimum. I'd be shocked if we don't have 4. I think a 5th one, maybe there's a couple options as far as where they come from, but yeah, I don't think. I think this team is built for a tournament setting as far as being able to make it deep into a tournament and score points. I mean, last year you look at the Big Tens. Granted, we had one guy go to the final, but we had like 3 or 4 guys finish 3rd. So, like, I think what Nebraska lacks in like an absolute number 1 hammer, because we don't really have a guy that's just a hammer and is number 1 in the weight class and is the best. But what we have is a bunch of guys that are the 3rd best or 4th best or 5th best. And in a tournament setting, you get a bunch of guys finishing 5th, 4th, 3rd, 7th, 2nd. You don't really need a champion to be, top 3 or 4 in the NCAA tournament.
So it's going to be a wild, weird year anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we done there? Are we done? We're probably hitting about a little bit over an hour. So
I think that's probably a good place to end.
Yeah, I think so. I think you hit on everything I kind of wanted to. Yeah.
Well, Dylan, you've been doing a damn good job covering wrestling.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
excellent.
having a good time doing it.
Good. Well, we look forward to hopefully more conversations with Mark Manning.
I hope so.
And some videos of you going to Hy-Vee as Mark Manning. You can do it. Just practice, and we'll put them up on the YouTube channel, and people can go, "Oh my God, where is that? I want to avoid that place." Anyway, okay, this is John Johnston signing off from the 5 Heart Podcast, where 5 hearts are the only hearts you need, or something close to that. Joined by Todd and Dylan, our wrestling experts. I hope you have enjoyed this wrestling show, because, we'd like to do something like this more often, or at least I'd like to see us do something like this more often, where we actually sit down and cover other sports besides just football, because as much as I love football, we have a whole bunch of sports, and they can be fun. So there.
And we're not that good at football, unfortunately, so.
Wait.
Like I said, I'm a realist, John. I'm a realist.
Oh my God. Okay, we're done. Thanks everybody for listening. Go Big Red.